Welcome, Shaun.
Welcome. Hello, Nick. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Same as I was 20 minutes ago when we had another chat, but that's okay. You've got your glasses on now.
I have, yeah. Today's topic, Shaun,
Yes.
something
Provenance.
close to both our hearts, I believe. Provenance, heritage, branding.
Yes. Yes. The three, I think, kind of go together. I think there's links between them all. I think it's about how we're sold things, about how we're marketed things as men in particular, that we are marketed clothing different than I would say women are. You know, there's a lot more focus on heritage, so you're buying into a certain heritage, or you're buying into a certain brand because of its history and because of its provenance. You know, is it made by blind nuns in the hills of Provence? Is it made in some little mill that's been there in the Derbyshire hills for 250 years, etc., etc., or is it made in a sweatshop in Bangladesh and we're being sold the idea? So there's lots there, isn't there, really?
There is, and I don't know if it's a fact or whether guys really do care more about this stuff than women, or if it's just that we like to get a bit nerdy about it. I know I'm not speaking for all men here. It's a certain subset that like to obsess about these things.
Yes. Do you count yourself in that subset?
Well, I think I do. But then again, okay. I always go all in on all sorts of hobbies, whether it's old drags or fly fishing or whatever. Yeah. It has to be something more. And of course, with clothes, I mean, whether it's Japanese denim or Scottish tweed or whatever, I mean, there is so much to be interested about. So,
so that's a yes then, isn't it? So I think we do care more. I think, and as you say, maybe not all men, but I think to an extent, the person that's buying a pair of Adidas trainers cares because they're Adidas, you know? So that, again, they're still buying into that Adidas heritage that they would buy into more than a shop's own brand pair of trainers, perhaps, even though that they may be better. So I'm just using that as an example. So I think, you know, if we bought a car, a lot of people will buy into the brand of a car rather than whether it's more suitable for them, you know, and they'll buy into, oh yeah, I'm buying this Mercedes because, you know, they're seen as the best luxury cars and, you know, yada yada, whereas it might not be the best use of money. That's just my sort of thoughts on it, where there might be something that's a little bit more suitable. So I think,
getting back to the heritage angle, do we like our clothes to be made by companies that have been around for a really long time? Are there companies that have been around for a really long time?
I'm not even 100% sure if it's necessary about the length of time that they've been around, because sometimes that's great, but sometimes companies that have perhaps been around only for maybe 20 or 30 years, they can, if they're doing it right, so if they're doing it, you know, say UK made, which is something we're going to keep coming back to, I'm sure. So if they're making things in the United Kingdom in the right way, that they're caring about their customers, that they're making products that, and obviously there's a price element here, but if they're making products that are, you know, extremely well made, that they're going to be made to last, you're not being sold a pup, you know, you're not being sold something that's going to go out of fashion as such, especially with clothing that you might be spending a bit more on. You want something that's going to last. So yes, the age thing adds. So I'll give you an example. Wolsey menswear that are now, I think, being sold through Matalan as some sort of Matalan sub-brand, that are the oldest cloth manufacturers in the UK, you know, dating back to 17 something.
1755, I think.
Well done, well done, Nick. So, you know, you think about how much heritage, how much they could go on to that heritage and sell that heritage for you know, how many years, I'm not going to work it out here, but they don't, you know, they make stuff that's okay. They kind of made an effort to sell it, so they're rebranded as Wolsey 1755. But when you looked at the label, it was still made out with the UK. You know, it still wasn't made in the UK. The quality was all right. Some of the stuff was okay. It looked all right. I have a few items that I've bought, but there's where they have the heritage, but they're not using it right. Yeah. I'll give you another example, perhaps. Henry Lloyd sailing wear, where, you know, they set up as a sailing wear company maybe 60, 70 years ago. I think it was Sir Francis Chichester that had worn their gear to sail around the world. And yet they're kind of now seen as a wee bit of a Neddy kind of casual, cheapish casual brand, you know, kind of sub Stone Islandy kind of line. And, you know, to me, they've got that heritage there, and they're kind of, maybe that's, listen, it's their business, that's the way they want to go. What I'm saying is, there's businesses that have been around a long time that are misusing or not selling their heritage correctly, whereas people could buy into that. And again, that's a marketing trick, but
I do notice that a few of the brands that have been around for a really long time don't actually make a huge point of having been around for a long time. Take William Lennon boots from just outside Sheffield.
Yes.
Stony Middle.
No, you've got experience of that.
Been around for just over 120 years, still in the same factory, still using the same equipment. Rumours say that some of the original staff are still there, but I don't think they are. But they don't really make a huge point of it. But it's it's a heritage site. Just opening the green door, walking in there, it's like stepping back 100 years.
I remember seeing your blog post. That was amazing, you know, to see this little sort of shed with, it's not much bigger than my garage, you know, with this little green door with a little brass plaque on it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
William Lennon. Do you think maybe they're happy with the level of sales that they're getting, that they can manage the level of sales, that if they went up?
I think there's about a dozen people working there, all told, and I think with the companies they work with, the orders they have, they've got just about capacity for what they're doing, and they seem utterly happy with it, and I think that's brilliant. There's no grand plans for expansion. They're not sort of trying to take over the world. There's no huge dividends paid out so their directors can buy new Rolls Royces. Just happy, and I think that's brilliant.
So if they were to then start to perhaps allocate a marketing budget, bring in a team, you know, outside to start to market their products, and the sales start to go up, and then they would need to think about another factory. Yeah, absolutely. So it's the business is there. I would imagine there's people come back again. They do motorcycle boots as well, don't they? Is that right?
They do actually make protective footwear for people who need steel toe boots, etc. Yeah. So it's not all footwear that could have been made in 1900. It's actually more modern stuff as well. Let's take a company like Barbour. I mean, they've also been around for 100 years or so, haven't they? No? I
would say at least 100 years. So they sort of started, I believe, sort of fishing gear, protective waterproofs, wartime, there or thereabout. I'm not going to say for sure because I don't know, and I'm sure with Barbour there'll be plenty of people that can correct us. But you look at them now, so yes, they have their factory still in South Shields. Okay, so it's still there.
And it's still family owned.
And it's still the same family as it's always been, which is great. But how much of that is made in that factory?
Well,
how many items do they now sell?
It's only they make about, I think it's 1,500 jackets a day in South Shields, but it's only the 3 classic models.
Right.
The rest is either made in Eastern Europe, Lithuania, I think, or Latvia, and some made in Macau, which of course is code for China. So they could have made a massive factory in South Shields.
Yeah, and you know, there's enough people in South Shields that would have appreciated them doing that as well. I'm sure, you know. I think, yeah, it's. I mean, again, that's again about them expanded. So if you look at sort of William Lennon, So you look at Barber. So those 3 jackets, if that's all Barber did, that's the only place they would be, wouldn't it? But if how many items do they do now? It seems to be every week there's a different style, or there's a different range of waterproofs, or hooded jackets, or, you know, again, it appeals. They don't particularly appeal to me. You know, they look okay, but they don't appeal to me. To me, a Barber is a wax jacket of a certain length, or you know, belted, not belted, hooded, not hooded. You know, it's got a lining that you can take out, you can wear it, you can throw it in the back of the car. That's, you don't get precious about it. That's, to me, that's what a Barber is all about. But, you know, again, it's they've expanded. I'm sure they're very successful. In fact, I think last Christmas I bought my mum a Barber handbag, maybe. Now, it was a handbag with a tweeding bit on it that said Barber on it. I think that's just about as close to Barber as it can get, you know. But yeah, and they do lots
of things. Is that Barber obviously realised that made in England, made elsewhere is a sensitive thing, because you can see on their jackets where they are made, or rather where they're not made, because the English-made ones says made in Great Britain, whereas the ones made elsewhere avoid any mention of where they're made. Yeah,
you'll maybe find it obscurely on the washing label at very, very
some of them hidden on a tag well inside a pocket or somewhere.
Yeah. Which kind of leads us on to our next point then. Where are we being sold a false provenance, you know? So where are we being sold an idea of made in England, blind nuns in Provence, Little Mill in Derbyshire, you know? So where are we being sold that idea when the reality is a lot different? So that is an example. I think so much of that now, where clothing, there's these kind of like two ideals that men in Britain today. You on the cider?
Oops.
You're on the cider already. I suppose there is a time difference. There's two ideals. There's either this like public schoolboy look, or there's the 1930s landowning gentleman look, you know? And I think that seemed to have sort of come to the fore, apart from football casual look, which has always been there, but probably not got time to talk about that. But these two looks are where people are buying into that look. So people are buying clothing that may give them the impression that that's how they are. So they're either like English public school boy, or they are English tweedy gent from the 30s, you know, and they'll stick to those rules. And I think the companies are buying in on this, and they're selling this ideal, you know, and then when you look at it, there's like a Union Jack, and there's outfitters, gentlemen's outfitters, blah, 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 using all the language around it. And then when you look at the label, you know, it's made in Bangladesh, or it's made in India. Now, I'm not saying everything that's made over there it makes it bad. I'm just saying don't sell us on an idea of something that isn't the reality.
It's a bit touchy when you sort of cast aspersions that producing something in, say, China is bad, because they may make iPhones in China. They can obviously make whatever they like.
Absolutely.
To quality.
Absolutely.
And I do often find that if you criticise a company for making their things in China, they'll start pulling the racism card.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to argue with.
As I say, I worked for Martens and Spencer's for many years, so I saw the change between everything going from made in UK to made abroad. And initially, it all went wrong, so things were awful. The quality was terrible. Then, as more and more factories opened, better quality, it improved. So yes, I know that, you know, some things that are made in countries in the Far East particularly are of excellent quality. They really are, but still don't try and sell us the fact. And they can kid themselves on that they're not, but they are. You know, there's companies that base their whole ethos around this sense of Englishness. And it's never Scottishness, is it? It's always Englishness. No chip.
Are you thinking sort of about places like Hackett or Jack Wills?
Yeah, they're two excellent examples where you're sold things with a Union Jack on it. You're sold things that You know, and you look at the advertising, you know, it's kind of like the way Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren did it excellently in America, sold this idealized, you know, East Coast kind of Boston, blah, blah, blah look, right? So we're kind of getting sold that in America, but a lot of this product, and it's still decent quality gear. I'm not saying it isn't, you know, but they're being sold and it's made in the Far East, you know. So it's you're being sold a false promise, really, in my mind anyway. I think, you know, and I think most people probably don't care. However, I do. So, you know.
But they could have actually made it in the UK, because there has been and there still is a UK manufacturing industry.
Exactly. And this is the other point where, you know, you can buy things that are made in the UK that aren't ridiculously expensive, that are affordable items. The classic example at the moment being Community Clothing, that's getting sold through Topshop. It's all UK made. You know, you can get a pair of UK made jeans that are like a fantastic fit for what, I think about £60, 50 or £60.
Remarkably cheap. I think part of the thing there is that they've cut out a good few of the intermediaries, so they're not looking at, say, 8 times markup compared to the manufacturing price.
And you look at, say, Private White VC, where it's a relatively new company. They've used the name Private White as, I think it's a relative perhaps of one of the founders of the company.
I think.
And they are, everything's made in the UK. It's all made in the same factory. It's made in a factory that's been a textile factory in the UK for a long time. I have a Paul Smith wool coat that I bought 20 odd years ago that I know was made in that factory. I just know through somebody that works it, but it was made in that same factory when they produce clothes for other people. So, you know, they're making a big deal of the UK bit, and why not? You know, why not indeed? You know, make a big deal out of it. Another example, perhaps John Smedley, which was going back to people maybe not making as much of a deal of the past, where they've been going for, I think, at least 150 years. I'm sure somebody will correct me, making basically the same thing, which is like fairly fine gauge knitwear in either Sea Island cotton or merino wool and various styles in the same factory. You know, and the only thing they've updated in the last sort of 20, 30 years is the odd design in the label, you know. But, you know, I can dig in my wardrobe a collared polo that's nearly 30 years old, which pretty much the same design as a collared polo I'm about to go and buy now. And, you know, the stuff is excellent and it lasts really well. And yes, it's fairly expensive. However, in the scheme of things, if I'm still wearing a jumper that I bought 20 odd, nearly 30 years ago, that I've maybe paid £80 for, you know, there's value in that, isn't there? My daughter's just left the door open, so I'm just getting her to close the door. Thank you, dear.
How about brands that sort of fake a history or buy a history? Just one that comes to mind now is Belstaff, which originally started out as a small company in Staffordshire, making motorcycle clothing. Having changed hands a few times now, they're now this massive fashion brand, which is barely recognisable apart from the brand logo as what it once was.
Yeah, we have a shop. We have one here, a Belstaff shop in Glasgow. You know, I have one Belstaff coat that was bought 1992 from a farmer's sale in amongst a pile of barbers. I didn't buy a barber, the person I was with did, and I think it was about £5, and it clearly been used for scrambling, motorcycling, you know, and it took a long time to get the smell out of it. So I wore it a while, put it away, and I dug it back out. But I know you've done a lot more research on Belstaff than I have, but because you have quite a few now, don't you? But you kind of swap them. Sorry,
not so many right now. No,
I think you kind of researched it and then decided you wanted to get a proper original one rather than one of the newer ones. Is that right?
Yeah. I think it was around 2000 they were taken over by an investment company and started producing in Italy. The first years of that are okay, but then they recently changed hands again.
Ah, right, okay.
And are now a just total fashion company. So
yeah.
I wanted one of the 1980s Trialmasters.
And do you think they're made better, the older ones? I mean, you've been able to compare them.
They're sort of made differently. The old ones were made for a purpose. Made so you could ride your motorbike in the rain. Or whatever weather. New ones probably wouldn't even know what a motorbike is.
That's true.
So no, I mean the newer ones are much lighter weight. They're not recognisable. I mean they have some of the design cues, but apart from that, it's not the same company at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I think when you look at, again, going back to sort of how it's branded, you were saying as such. So, you know, they've put the label on. It kind of looks the same, but it's part of a range of products that are I don't know, marketed under that heritage, aren't they? So if you look at their adverts, it's all around that sort of, again, English country house heritage to an extent, isn't it? And it's like people drawing up, and so you had like an advert for a motorcycle coat that's suddenly been sold with somebody in an Aston Martin DB6, you know. So you're like, I'm not getting the connection there, you know. But then I suppose it's a worldwide thing, isn't it? So, you know, people go, oh, you know, it's that English brand, you know, I can buy into that English brand, you know. In America, again, American, they love all that, don't they? They love up to an extent, they love that.
You do also have companies that, I mean, some will make up a backstory. I came across a couple of companies recently where their digital marketing content creators had obviously been to the same course.
Okay.
One of them was a watch company, Daniel Wellington.
Right.
I can't recall the other, but their backstories were both identical.
Okay, right.
The company founders had been at a beach somewhere hot, and they'd met this traveller from Scandinavia by the name of so-and-so, and he'd given them this idea to start a company, blah, blah, blah. It was pathetic because the stories were just so transparently false and the same.
I wasn't aware of that. So
why even bother?
It's like they clearly think that that's going to sell more product than you just saying, there's a watch, it's got Daniel Wellington, that's my name, there you go, I've started making watches, you know. It's like, it's not, the watch world's, it's not something I know a lot around, but it just seems to have gone sort of stratospheric with, and then there's all these sort of brands coming in below that make lovely sort of British watches with our Swiss movement and stuff that, you know, some of them look amazing. They look really nice for like just a few £100, you know. But that's a whole...
They won't sell though without a proper story about some travels and a mysterious stranger telling them stuff. And
yeah, I quite like that. Like, did you say a Swedish traveller?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting a picture in my mind, just this guy on the beach,
you know, like you feel you would like one of those watches.
Chilled out and like starting to talk about watches, you know. You would just walk away. You wouldn't hang around. You'd be like, okay, mate, see you later.
Yeah,
I'm out of here.
But then again, storytelling is such a big part of marketing now. But I think it does work better if the story you're telling actually has a basis in the truth,
in some sort of reality.
Take the Norwegian company Ødelandsskoen. It doesn't really translate well British pronunciation, but the guy invented the original penny loafer.
Right.
So the people now working at selling this has an amazing story. I mean, this guy went to America, he made shoes, he came home, he invented the penny loafer, and it was then the design was appropriated, stolen by many others. But there you've got a real story.
But then the people that are making the penny loafers don't seem to be using that story, though, do they?
Well, the guys selling the original are now telling it, but that's sort of come as a bit of a surprise to everyone who thought that, say, GH Base made the original or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do like a good story, and I do like to know where my things come from.
Yeah, which gets us back to the original point that I think men will tend to sort of buy into that, whereas I don't want to say this, but I think women will tend to buy a name, so they will. It's all encompassing. So there'll be like a name that will be, so whether it's Dior or I don't know,
Gucci.
Yeah, let's just say
Mulberry.
You know, yeah, Mulberry. So they'll tend to maybe buy into that, and it's not that the stuff's any less quality, but they'll maybe not need to know as much of a backstory, perhaps. And again, I'm willing to be contradicted. Absolutely. I noticed Maud's just made a little comment there, which we can read later. But yeah, so I think maybe they won't sort of buy into the backstory perhaps as much. But you're right. It's a marketing tool, but when it's right, when there is a correct story behind something, and when whether it's a true story, makes all the difference. I think. Look, I'm going to give you, talking about on this topic of branding. If you look at Lacoste now, when you think of Lacoste, you just think of a polo shirt, don't you? So you just think of a polo shirt with a logo on it, and that's a Lacoste polo shirt. And you know that they were invented by the man himself, Henry maybe, because it was a smart and comfortable way to play tennis that still had a collar, etc., etc. And so there is a little bit of a story there. Fred Perry, I believe, was the same. So he'd made them around comfort and playing tennis. So it was like a comfortable way to play tennis. I don't know what came first. I've not looked at it. I don't really know the story. But you've got two items there that you can still buy today that are essentially the same as were marketed and invented with a correct story sometime in the 20s, 1930s, whatever. You can still buy that item today.
But the companies have probably been bought and sold many times. And
I would imagine.
Been moved, and range has been expanded massively, and sort of the original essence has been kind of forgotten.
Yeah, and I think again, yeah, it's so a company will come in and go, yeah, we can make your company this big, but you're going to have to like sacrifice this, so the manufacturing will outsource that, but we're going to make you a range of kit bags that will have your name on it, and a range of socks or a t-shirt, or but your brand will be everywhere, so everyone will know your name. So whereas they know that they'll sell, and I'm going to give you Armani as an example here, so moving on, where they know that they sell £800 suits, they know that they are the suits that maybe footballers, I should have got a drink as well, that footballers will wear. But they also know that if they pay £40, they can get a T-shirt with that name written on across the front of it that will say Armani. So what relation has a plain white T-shirt that's probably worth about £1, because it's got Armani on it? What's the association? So are you buying into that? Are you buying into that? I'm not saying you, because I'm sure you won't. Are you buying into that myth of footballer suits, or are you of decades of Italian tailoring, of perfecting that soft look suit by buying a T-shirt that's got the name on it? Or are you just want to tell everybody you've bought a T-shirt that's got Armani, that's an Armani T-shirt?
And you probably paid £100 for it.
Hmm?
And you probably paid £100 for it, unless it's a knockoff. The larger the logo, the more likely it's going to be a knockoff.
Exactly. So, like, if you could buy a T-shirt by like Fruit of the Loom, that would probably be better quality than the one. Am I going to get sued? No. By Armani.
One brand I wanted to mention before we close, though, when you were talking about expanding the range and so forth, it's sort of the elephant in the room, really. We're talking shoes. Dr. Martens. What went wrong there? Originally a family business. Then they obviously started getting ideas, started offshoring production, expanding the range a bit, were bought up by an investment company who has just massively pumped them up. And what has the result been these days? They've got lots of Doc Martens shops. They've got a huge range of apparel and accessories and fashion shoes. But what went wrong underway?
Quality.
Quality went down the toilet.
Yeah, yeah. And to which now there's Facebook groups and all sorts of people railing against the the fact that they're buying these relatively. Now, bear in mind the age group that generally buys them are, I'd say, teens, 20s, because they buy into the whole music heritage of some of the Dr. Martens. Probably quite a big investment for them, so £80, £100 for a pair of shoes, whereas they normally wouldn't be. And they're getting ripped off.
They certainly are.
And
the odd thing is, I mean, whenever I find a pair of Dr. Martens, I have a look inside to see where they're made. And they're made in China, Vietnam, at least a couple of other places. I'm completely surprised by how many places will actually make them.
Yeah, and in what conditions.
And yeah, working conditions there, but also the quality is just rubbish. The soles split after just a few months. People used to say they'd buy a pair of Doc Martens, wear them for 20 years.
Yeah.
But what has the company's response to this been? Well, they have reopened a small factory in the UK where they make the Made in England line, which are still not as good as they used to be, because who makes the ones like they used to be and have been making them all the time? That's NPS, which has their factory just up the road from the Doc Martens HQ and factory in.
And if I could hold you there, and we also have.
Oh, there you go.
I was just going to put these on. I was just going to actually put these on before we made the call. So that'll lead you on to NPS, which then leads on to?
Onto Solvair, yeah. Solvair. So, I mean, they've been making them for 50, 60 years in the same factory. You can book factory visits. It's utterly charming. Same factory building, same equipment. They're still using the same processes, and it's the same quality. But, I mean, people just will keep buying the Doc Martens.
Yeah. And again, it's the sort of, they're buying into a whole UK thing, whether it's UK made with Dr. Martens, but they're buying into that whole mod, ska, soul, boot boy, skins,
cool
that whole culture where you can put all that in a shoe, and that's a Dr. Martens shoe, and that's, I think, where they've let people down, that again, as you say, that you could have them that would last you 20 years, and you can have them nowadays. My wife bought a pair of the sort of dealer boot style ones, and she walked to and from work daily. Now I think it's about 3 miles each way. We watched to and from work, and after 7 months, boom, soles were right through, and and she's not heavy on her shoes by any means, but she was really disappointed because she spent 130, 140 pounds on them, and they lasted for 7 months. Again, we got no response back from or a derisory response back from Dr. Martin. Whereas, okay, well, say these Solvair, so I've been wearing them, that's the amount of wear after about 3 years maybe, and they were bought second hand. So there's the other thing. So I haven't given Solvair any money.
Well, there we go.
There we are.
If we were to summarise what we have been talking about now, what would we say?
We'll have to.
Is it just two geezers talking about stuff they really miffed about?
Yeah, it's just our opinion, and but I know that a lot of people share our views, I think. And I think if they look on your blog, they'll see you sharing your views on a regular basis, whereas me, it's just an occasional one on Instagram. But yeah, and I think it just makes you think that little bit harder about what you're buying, where you're buying it, where was it made, because it's a clear indication generally of how long something's going to last you, and will you still be wearing it in 5 or 6 years' time? Will it last you in 5 or 6 years' time? And I think there's a clear link there.
I think that brings us to a second topic we could do a live chat about. Buying stuff that isn't just spur of the moment, but that you can see yourself using for years to come.
tune in the same time next week.
So buying stuff that the 80-year-old you will still enjoy.
Yeah. Obviously, you're that little bit closer.
Last of the summer wine coming up here.
Than I am. Especially if you're drinking cider in the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Shaun, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Take care, and let's do this again. We'll do it again soon. All right.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Have a good
Nick.
evening.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.